Maria said, we will be going over some Google spreadsheet tips and tricks for you guys. So we know that many of you guys routinely manage and participate in several activities that require you to gather and organize information and data. So some examples include getting lists of people to recruit for a new club, examining and identifying pertinent data points for a class project, or developing an organized budget for how to best allocate limited amount of funds. So most of these times, I can imagine that you guys would resort to Google Sheets to organize your data. Google Sheets is a very powerful tool and helps you create charts, identify trends, organize, and interpret data as well. So you might be asking, what's in it for me to join this workshop today? So one, we're going to be going over some spreadsheet tips that can be utilized by people with different experience levels. So it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or you're super advanced in utilizing Google Sheets. Today's presentation will help you in whatever experience level you are. Two, these tips and tricks can help you save time and energy when creating presentations, making calculations, and more. And you can learn to use these tips in your classes, campus activities, as well as your future and professional academic careers and endeavors. So today we'll learn a couple of the tips which may help you manage some of the spreadsheet related tasks that we discussed before. We're going to help you enhance your spreadsheet skills so you can apply them in your classes and your campus activities. So similar to Google Spreadsheets is Microsoft Excel, and both possess really similar features and functionality. Google Sheets is primarily used for students and or for personal usage, while businesses tend to lead towards Microsoft Excel. But it's helpful to know that most of these functions that we're going to talk about today can be used the same way across both programs. So today in our presentation, we'll be watching a few videos in Excel as well as going through live demonstrations in Google Spreadsheet. So before we begin, we'd love to get to know your comfort level and experience with Google Spreadsheets. So to all our participants today, we would love for you to engage with us and interact with us. So please through the chat, let us know, your experience with Excel, if you've used it before, or if you've been experienced with Google Spreadsheets.
Looks like we're getting like people that have some experience, people that are pretty on the beginner level so far.
Yeah, that's great. So that's perfect for today's presentation. So it looks like we have a mixture of experience levels today, so that is fantastic. So let's get started by talking about our first tip/trick. So the first tip that we're going to be talking about is called Vlookup. So here we have a scenario with Shanna, who is a high school student who runs a photography club in her school for the last 10 months. She wants to compare attendance numbers for students in the weekly meetings over the past few months. She's collected data for all the time in one sheet, and everything has been formatted in the same style. So the column headers are all the same. Shanna has noticed that the current month data is lower than the past months, which means that students' attendance in her bi-weekly photography club has declined. So here we have a scenario where Shanna can use VLOOKUP to quickly find information from the past few months. So here we can see that the syntax for VLOOKUP is equal VLOOKUP and then in parentheses, value, table, index number, and the approximate match, which is titled false. So you might be wondering, what is syntax? Well, syntax refers to the layout and order of a function and its arguments. So what is an argument? An argument are the values that functions use to perform the calculations. So a function in Excel or Google Sheets is a built-in formula. They all begin with an equal sign and then followed by the function's name. So it could be if, sum, count, and here our function name is VLOOKUP. So here we can see that VLOOKUP can be utilized to look up a value in a table by matching with the first column. So now we're going to watch a video from Microsoft Excel on how VLOOKUP can be utilized in Excel. right, perfect. So that was how we can utilize VLOOKUP on Microsoft Excel. So now we're going to do a demonstration on how you can use VLOOKUP in Google Sheets. So here we have Shanna, who has the attendance for her team members for the past few months. So today we're going to compare the attendance from January and the attendance from August. So here we can see that we have about 20 members, and we're going to look up member 20's attendance. So what we can do is we're going to find member 20, and then on the column next to it, we're going to do equals, because we always start all our functions with equals. Then we're going to type in VLOOKUP, and then in parentheses, we're going to select that we're looking for a member 20. So this automatically puts in a 24 for us. And then we want to let the Excel function know what's the range that we're looking through. So we're going to highlight what we're looking through for January. And then we're looking for column number 2. And then we want an exact match. So we're going to enter false. So when we enter this, here we can see that it found that team number 20 was in attendance 19 times in January. So imagine we had 100 members. Going through it for every month would be an immense amount of work. But here we can easily use VLOOKUP to find the attendance for member 20. So we can do the same thing for August. We're going to do equals VLOOKUP, then in parentheses select member 20, which is H24. Then the range that we're looking for is going to be highlighted, comma, and then column 2, and then false once again. So here we can see in August, member 20 did not attend a single meeting. So here, Shanna was able to quickly see that member 20 was super active and participated a lot in January, but just like she noticed in August with the attendance declining, member 20 didn't end up attending any of the meetings. What is the syntax for VLOOKUP? So we went over this like 2 slides ago. Remember, the syntax is the function and its arguments. So if you were going to use VLOOKUP in Google Sheets, what would you type into the cell to find Shayna's attendance numbers? All right, awesome. Looks like we got a few responses. So yeah, remember that syntax is always equal, VLOOKUP, and then you're going to do parenthesis and click on what you're looking for, the cell, then comma, then highlight the range, then another comma, then column number 2, comma, false, and then parenthesis. So that's exactly how the syntax works, and syntax is the same for everything, equal, and then followed by the function name. All right, so the next tip that we're going to go over is called flash fills. So here we have a scenario with Amelia. Amelia is helping her librarian add new books to the library software. After entering the names of 100 books, she realizes that she made a mistake when she was formatting the author's names. The librarian had mentioned that the author's names should be entered in the format last name, first name, middle initial, not first name, middle initial, last name. So here, Amelia can use flash fill to quickly organize the information without having to type it all in again by hand. So obviously with 100 books, that would be so much to go through 100 authors and have to rewrite their names all over again. So using flash fill, we're able to quickly reorganize this information and save a lot of time. So here we're going to watch a quick video on flash fills in Microsoft Excel, and then we'll go through the scenario with Amelia. as you can see, that's how you use flash fill with Excel. But in our case, we're going to be using flash fill um, in Google Sheets. So in Google Sheets, flash fills is actually called smart fills. And it's something Google Sheets recognizes on its own. So as you saw in the video in Microsoft Excel, you have to go in, click on data, and then click flash fills. But here in Excel, Google Sheets, they actually recognize this on your own. So here we have Amelia's scenario. So we have in column number 1, the book titles, and then here we have her author name. But what she did was she put first name, last name, and middle initial, but we wanna organize it in a different way. So the easiest way we could do this is to break it up into 3 different columns for first name, last name, and middle initial. And that way we can more easily organize it in whatever format the librarian wants it to be. So to use flash fill, Amelia can simply type in the correctly formatted value in the cell. So here we're going to take the first name of book number 1. So we have John, and then we're going to go down and put in Sarah. So after we type in the first couple ones, we have Maya, and then Isha, Layla, Ria, and eventually this will recognize that we are pointing in the same, filling in the same pattern, and it'll all fill in on its own. So we can use the same thing with the last name. And as we can see here, Smart Fill came up for the last name. So it'll say formula suggestions, and we think we can fill these cells using a formula. So here we first just typed in the first 2, and then on the third one it recognized. So once we click the check mark and accept the suggestion, here we can see that it's organized everything on its own, and we didn't have to go through and fill everything. So moving forward, our next tip is using if to make logical comparisons. So here we have a scenario where Katie is working as an intern at a local baseball association. So one of her jobs is to provide snacks to players every Friday afternoon. Katie is allocated a different budget each week depending upon the number of teams visiting each Friday. Her supervisor wants to know on a month-by-month basis if they're going over budget. So here, the if to make logical comparisons is a useful trick that Katie can use. This will help her organize the data and easily find whether she's going over or under the budget each week. So to utilize the if function, it's basically the same in both Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets, unlike our previous tip was. So in the top bar on the sheet area, there's always an FX icon, which signifies the function. So here, users can select different analysis or interpretations tools they want to use. So Katie can click on the FX icon and then add an equal sign, and then you always follow by the function name. So here she would do equal sign if, and then she would follow the syntax C2 is greater than or equal to B2, and then you put what you want the cell to be titled if it is a true statement, and then followed by what you want the cell to be titled if it's a false statement. So obviously the C2 and B2 would change based on what cell you're using, but in our case, when we talk about Katie, in the very first time that we're going to input the if function, we're going to use C2 and B2. So once again, we're going to watch a quick video on how this is done on Excel, and then we'll go through Katie's scenario on Google Sheets.
Use the if function in Excel to compare text or values in a cell to what you are expecting. Select a cell, type equals if, and add the condition to test. In this case, we are seeing if actual is greater than budgeted. Add an if true value and an if false value. Press enter. Select the cell and drag to apply the if to other rows. That's it.
All right, so for Katie's scenario here, we have each month from January to December, how much was budgeted, and then how much was actually spent. So here we want to see the status. Was Katie over the budget or was she under the budget? So what we're going to do is we're going to do our equal as always, then if, which is the function name. So now we're going to do the condition that we want to test. So here we have for January, the amount spent would be in cell C2. And then we're going to do the greater than, and then the equal sign. And then we want to do B2, comparing it to B2. So now if the function is true, then we're going to put over budget. But if the function is false, we're going to put under budget. So here we can see that the actual amount spent in January was $465.89, but the amount spent was $567.08. So obviously, Katie was over budget for the month of January. So here, if we click on the bottom right of the cell, we can actually apply this to the rest of the months without actually having to type the if function all over again for every single row that we have. So here we can clearly and more easily see which months Katie went over budget and which months Katie was under budget. So, dragging from the bottom right corner all the way down really saves time from having to input the syntax for every row, because that would take a lot of time. Does anyone have any questions on how to utilize the if function?
I have a question.
Yes.
So in this particular scenario, the item that came before the comma was true, and then the second one was false. Is that automatic?
Yes. So you always
Okay.
put what's true first and then what's
Okay.
false second. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. For every expression, always first true and then false. So you
Okay.
do equals if, parentheses, the condition that you want to test, and then what you're testing it compared to. And then if that statement is true, then it would be over budget. And then whatever is false in this case would be under budget. Does anyone have any other questions on utilizing if?
We do have another question from Angelica. She's asking, how would you do an if function for 3 conditions?
So generally the if condition is used to compare two entities, but I believe you can use 3 if you wanted to do like B2 greater than C2 greater than D2. So you would just have more of the greater than or equal to signs in between. All right. So in the chat, we'd like to know what is another scenario in which you think that if for logical comparisons can be used. So here we had budgeting, but what else could this function be used for? Yeah, awesome. So we have status of a membership, tracking statuses in a group. Perhaps if you want to look for top grades, pass or fail, those are all really great examples and really pertinent examples in the tech field or in your school or class projects in which you can use this if condition. All right, awesome. So the next tip or trick that we're going to go over is called using conditional formatting to highlight information. So we have here Ria, who volunteers for a local nonprofit organization that supports women-owned businesses in the city. So recently, Ria sent out a survey to nearly 1,000 of those women who own businesses and are registered on their website to know which age range they fall in and what kind of event they would be interested in attending in 2021. She spent a lot of time organizing all of the response data into a spreadsheet, but now she has to dig through that information and find out what kind of event to organize for age-specific groups. She can use conditional formatting here because she can assign a particular data value a color. So here Ria can organize by color coding and quickly see the age range. So to use this function, Ria can simply go to the conditional formatting option on the Home tab and select from one of the drop-down choices on how to organize that data. So she would choose Highlight Cell Rules and then select one of the options to assign a color for data that corresponds to the particular option. So there's a few options like highlighting the top 10, the bottom 10, the top 10%, and also greater than or less than functions. So here, for example, Ria can highlight cells with values greater than 35 as yellow and highlight cells with values less than 45 years in green. So here we're going to watch how this can be utilized in Microsoft Excel.
Use conditional formatting to highlight data and make it easier to visually explore and analyze. Need to quickly find the top expenses for the month? Select the cells. Select Home, Conditional Formatting. Top, bottom rules, top 10 items. Choose how many values you want highlighted and select a format. Select OK. Looks good.
Okay, so that's how you basically use conditional comparisons in Microsoft Excel, but here we're going to talk about how we can utilize it in Google Sheets using RIA scenarios. So here we have about 40 members who responded to RIA's form. She's organized by age for one column and event type for another column. So what we can do here to highlight, let's say we want to see ages greater than or equal to 40 and then ages less than 40. So we're going to highlight the age column all the way through. And then we're going to click on Format at the top. And then the third from the bottom is Conditional Formatting. So here on the right side, we can see that we want to apply from B2 to B41, and then we're going to format the cells if, and then here we have many options. So we're going to go to the greater than or equal to option because we want to see ages greater than or equal to 40. And then we're going to click in the value. So we want greater than or equal to 40. And we have default as green. So here we can say done. So as you can see here, we have every value greater than or equal to 40 highlighted in the color green. So now we can add another rule. So we're going to click add another rule, but this time we want to format cells that are less than 40. So we're going to do format the cells if they're less than, and then we're going to enter the value to be 40. And obviously we don't want it to be green, so we're going to change another color so we can make it blue this time. And then we click done. And now as we can see here, RIA has quickly organized her data based on age. So everything that's greater than or equal to 40 has been highlighted in green. And then everyone who's less than 40 has been highlighted in blue. So this is really easy way for RIA to know how to organize her members and participants in the event by age range without having to go through and individually assign and organize by age. Does anyone have any questions on utilizing conditional formatting in Google Sheets? Okay, awesome. And just a reminder for conditional formatting that it doesn't have to always be a greater than or less than function. You can always do highlight the top 10, highlight the top 10%, highlight the bottom 10, highlight cells that are empty, highlight cells that are filled. There's so many options in conditional formatting. So, once you click on conditional formatting, there'll be so many drop-down options that you can utilize. So now I'd like to know, what's a scenario in your life that you think conditional formatting would be most useful for? So I think for me, if I was looking at, how much I've spent over the past month, I could see the top 10 of my expenditures to see, what I'm spending my most of my money on. Yeah, yep, exactly. So as Melissa said, knowing what to spend, it's a great way to keep track of your own personal expenditures, or, if you're working for a business and you want to look at what your business's expenses are, that would be great. Yes, highlighting overdue accounts would be another amazing way to use conditional formatting. Does anyone else have a scenario that conditional formatting they think would be useful for in what they would do? Another way people sometimes use conditional formatting is, if you have scores of an exam or a test and you want to easily see who fell in the top 10% or the top 10, that's another way you can also use conditional formatting for. So those are a few tips that we have for you today. As always, both tips can be utilized on Google Spreadsheets as well as Microsoft Excel. We know people use them for different reasons, so they are interchangeable. So does anyone have any final thoughts or questions? Or also, if you would like to share some of your own favorite spreadsheet tips and tricks that we didn't go over today, we would love to hear those as well.
Hi, I wanted to ask about the conditional formatting.
Yeah.
So, like let's say I had a task list and like on the left column was all the tasks and then on the right column I had like finished or done and then the ones that weren't done I left empty. If I wanted to see all the ones like all the tasks that weren't finished, would I be able to search by like the empty cells on the right so that I could see all the cells or all the ones that aren't done?
Yeah, so one of the options actually, we can go back to this. So one of the options here, so if we highlight this column once again and we click add on another rule, so you can format the cells if they're empty, whether the text contains, so if you did do it by finished and done, you can highlight text contains and then you would do finished and then highlight one, let's say red, and then text contains done, and then you would highlight that like purple. Would be one way if you wanted to include text. Otherwise, if you wanted to just do finished and then leave everything else empty, you could format rules by is empty and is not empty. And then, so this doesn't just work with values. So a lot of times we think of conditional formatting with values like numbers, budgets, prices, scores, but we can actually use them for actual words or phrases as well.
I see. Thank you.
Yep, of course. Do we have any other thoughts or questions or comments?
Someone said, can you review the flash fill?
Oh yeah, definitely. So for flash fills here, when we do this in Excel, we actually have to go into the data tab and then click flash fill because Excel doesn't recognize it on its own. But in Google Sheets here, we have something called Smart Fill, so we can delete these. So what we'll do is for last name, we'll type in the first few for Google Sheets to recognize the pattern. So we have Smith, Holt, Rogers. So by the third one, Google Spreadsheets has automatically on its own recognized the pattern that we're taking the second word from the author name column. So as long as we click accept suggestion, it's already all in there for us. So the easy way is Google Sheets because you don't have to really click anything or know where to find the flash fill because Google Sheets just recognize it's on its own. I see we have one more question. Are you able to copy conditional formatting to other spreadsheets? Yes, you can. Generally, if you just copy exactly what you've done and put into another spreadsheet, it'll carry through. All right, so just to close off, I'm going to hand it off to Melissa.
So like I mentioned, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We hope you learned something new, even if you are proficient in Excel or Google Spreadsheets. I know I learned a lot. So that wraps up for this evening.